Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to go over some ideas and techniques on some things you can do in your yard to maintain it while you're in the process of selling a home, and some things you can do in advance that may help you sell the home. I have a lot of experience with this. This is a question that's been asked of me, and landscaping that I have performed over the last 30 years, quite a bit. I've sold a lot of plants for this purpose, having had a garden center for years. And so I thought I'd share some of the things that I know to maybe help you sell your home faster, sell a piece of real estate a little bit faster. So let's get started. Number one is definitely just neat. We want to keep the space outside your home neat, through the whole process. And neat is just, mowing and edging and blowing and picking up piles of debris and just making sure that, just at a moment's notice when you get a call that somebody's going to view your house, that it's always in that neat condition. On mowing, normally most people are probably mowing once a week. I would, during a home sale, if you're still living in the home, maybe drop that down to about every fourth or fifth day. Golf courses maintain their turf by mowing it, the fairways almost every other day. They mow the greens almost every day. And the reason for that is, if they mow more frequently, they don't have to take quite as much grass off at the time. And when you don't take as much grass off at the time, you lessen the chance of burning it down below. And so the grass is greener. So if you mow once a week and it's grown a lot that week, when you scalp it off, the sun is going to brown it out quite a bit. So keep that in mind. If you're living in the house, mow it more frequently. Also, obviously, using your blower very frequently, probably daily, especially if you're selling during the fall. That's going to be key. As part of mowing, we definitely want to edge along hard surfaces, any place where the grass meets a hard surface. If you have a gas edger or electric edger, obviously those are easier to use, but you can actually use a hand shovel and just go right along all your hard surfaces, driveways, sidewalks, that kind of thing, and make sure the grass is really neat and trimmed up along those areas. And any dirt or anything that is under that grass, scoop it off and get the driveway and the sidewalk completely clean of that kind of stuff. Make sure your hoses are rolled up if you still have hoses. If you still happen to have a water hose or something in the yard, make sure it's rolled up neatly. In terms of weed control is going to be a big thing. We definitely don't want weeds growing all up in our beds. Obviously, there are chemicals that you can spray on weeds. Most of those chemicals, though, take as much as 2 weeks to kill weeds. They kill them dead, but it can take 2 weeks, and it can take a week sometimes of just this yellowing process, that can make the weed actually more unattractive during the time that it's actually dying. Obviously, there's you can hand pull them as well, but hand pulling during this process, is going to create some messes on the sidewalks and things like that you may not want to be doing while you're trying to sell your house. I would recommend using these vinegar-based products that you can get. Now you're seeing these advertised more and more, these weed killers. This is a 20% vinegar solution that you mix into some sort of sprayer. This is just a pump sprayer here. It'll tell you on the, read the directions thoroughly on these vinegar sprays. Actually, you need to wear goggles on them. They can cause some eye damage. But the reason I would use these vinegar sprays for controlling weeds during this, they're not that great at actually killing weeds. They do okay. I have a video on my channel where I tested these things, and they'll kill 80% of the weeds, but a lot of them, they'll just burn them off and they'll come back. But in this case, this vinegar solutions and this burnout solution here, which is a citric acid solution, they burn the tops of the weeds off very, very quickly. And so within 24 hours, 48 hours, that weed looks dead on the top, and it just disappears into your mulch. And so that's why I would use these solutions, is because they're going to keep the space looking neat. And so if you go onto like a 4-day mowing schedule or something like that, every 4th day, just walk around with that vinegar mix in your sprayer and just pop those weeds, and it will look consistently weed-free throughout the process of selling your home. These are non-selective sprays, so keep that in mind. They will hurt other things that they get sprayed on, so be really careful using your sprayer. This burnout product actually comes with its own sprayer here. Just make sure you put the nozzle on a setting that's not spraying the other things in the area, because it will damage those as well. One of the big things I see is plants that are completely out of control on foundations. Probably half the houses in my neighborhood, this neighborhood I'm in, is about 25 years old, and the plants that were planted on the foundations really should have either been pulled out a long time ago or really cut back very hard at some point and allowed to re-establish themselves, because now they're 6 or 8 feet tall on a foundation. Those things are difficult to deal with when you're selling a house. If you knew a year in advance that you were selling, then you could go in the late winter and cut any of these kind of leafy evergreens like these boxwoods or hollies or anything like that down very far and allow them to flush back out during the season. If you're listing your house in like 2 months, obviously you can't do that because the plants would look horrible during that period of time. So in that case, you're just going to neaten them up as best you can. These boxwoods here are the appropriate height for my house, but even still, I'm going to just come in here and just kind of neaten them up just a little bit. I can do this kind of neatening up anytime, really. Any kind of serious cutting on them, I'd probably just want to do in the late winter or spring, or maybe into early summer. That would be about the extent of that. If I think about this, if I cut this way back to here in August, which I don't need to, but if I did, it's going to be naked here, and then it's not going to grow because the summer's almost over. So September, October, November, December, January, this plant's going to be naked. So timing is important. Hard pruning would be done in the late winter into early summer and would allow time for the plants to recover some before you list your house. If you're listing your house in the fall or winter, just a really light neatening up of the tops and sides of your plants and call it done. So that's how I would address these leafy evergreen shrubs like these boxwoods or hollies or something like that. Conifers are kind of a different animal altogether. If they've got big giant brown spots in them, dead places in them, they recover so slowly that if you can, removing a conifer that's in bad shape is probably your best bet. Even if you're not going to replace it, I think it would be a big giant distraction to have a big brown spot in one of your conifers like that. Like I say, I think it'd be better without it than with it, or go find some replacement for it. If you're going to do any pruning on conifers, these are just going to be done very, very lightly. If you're doing real estate sales like this, we don't want to cut into this thing at all because it's just not going to recover very quickly, like I just said. And so we're going to see the brown, all the brown parts in the middle of this plant. So if you need to shear them, very, very, very lightly with a good, very, very sharp pair of head shears. If it's got a big giant hole in it, like I say, I would probably try to, back a car over to it and hook something onto it and jerk it out of the ground or dig it out if you can, because it's definitely going to be a distraction to your landscape. So let's talk about a very important topic, and that's adding plants into the landscape to increase your curb appeal. I've had tons of people come into came into my garden center over the years, asking me what plants they should use. Maybe they're replacing some foundation plants. Maybe they pulled out some conifers, that were browned out. For whatever reason, they want to add pieces to the foundation. I always say go with just green basic things like those baby Jim boxwoods that I just pruned over there. That would be a great choice. I love this purple daydream loropetalum with the purple foliage here. It's one of my favorite plants in my yard. It looks beautiful in this container. I don't think you should plant this plant though for a real estate sale. I don't think you should plant purple foliage things, yellow foliage things, blue foliage things, anything that, things that we may love or something that someone else may really, really dislike. And I don't think they're gonna mind little perfect green balls. I think in their mind they can work with that. They can envision putting other things around them and that kind of thing. So I would avoid getting shrubs that are really brightly colored or brightly flowered. Maybe they don't like red flowers. You don't know. You have no idea. And so if you go into a garden center, go for really basic, low maintenance looking things, because it also may be someone who just, all they want is low maintenance. They may work a long way from the house, where your house is. They may be working an hour commute. They're not going to have time to do that kind of maintenance, and that's the kind of thing they're looking for, is a low maintenance yard, in their mind. So basic green round balls when you're replacing things for a resale. So now we got the place neatened up. We've done our little bit of pruning, and we've replaced a couple plants here and there with just perfect little round balls. Adding color is kind of tricky. If you're not living in the house, flower baskets are probably not a great idea because they're very unforgiving. Like if you let them dry out, if you skipped 3 days between visiting the house, to come back and mow and that kind of thing, flower baskets, if they ever get super, super dry and decline, they're very hard to recover. They will recover, but you're trying to keep the place looking fresh all the time. If you're gonna add baskets to the house, spring, summer, fall, fern baskets and foliage baskets, like I have up here, are probably your best choice because they're going to be far more forgiving. If I miss watering that thing, that fern for a day, it's not going to like it. It doesn't like it at all, and you can see it shriveling up a little bit. But when I water it, generally speaking, it'll come right back out of that kind of little semi-dormancy it's going into, and fluff right back up. So that's what I would do. Another one of those things too that kind of I see flowers recommended all the time, and I do have some annual flowers out here in my yard, and it's August now, and so my first frost comes along, those are going to decline. I am going to replace them, and I'll replace them with some pansies, but I'll use really muted lavenders and whites and that kind of thing. I probably won't go for hot pinks and reds and those kinds of things. Just really, like I say, muted colors. If you want to put a pot with some flowers in it or something like that, that's fine at the entryway. But keep in mind, if you let flowers decline, like I just said, for any length of time without watering them, then they're not going to recover from it. You're just going to end up having wasted your money. So foliage things like this may be your best bet. So one other thing on plant maintenance, I don't know when you're listing your home. I don't know what time of year it is when you're watching this video, but you can fertilize all your trees and shrubs and even your turf and all those kinds of things in the late winter or early spring, and I would recommend you do that. It's going to they're going to have more of that fresh new growth on them. As you get toward, let's say the 4th of July, sometime in there, that really becomes almost too late to fertilize. You can fertilize your baskets and flowers and those kinds of things. Continue to fertilize those things to keep the most color you can on them and the best new growth on them. But your trees and shrubs and perennials, things that are planted into the ground like that, you really need to back off the fertilizer at that point. So I would use a slow release fertilizer anytime between, the 1st of March and the 4th of July. Those things are going to last about 3 months, and they're going to give you the best, freshest new growth on all of your plants during the growing season. But again, cut that off by August or September. If I fertilize right now, I'm shooting this video in late August. If I fertilized right now, I'd put on some new growth, and then it could be badly damaged by our first frost in the fall. And that's not going to look very good at all, for people coming to look at your house if it's still on the market at that point. So after all the mowing and edging and weeding and pruning and all those other tasks are done, and adding flowers and all those kinds of things, you definitely want to have it mulched. You want to have the ground cover in your bed with some neat fresh mulch. I'm kind of lucky on this side of my yard. I have pine trees over here, and so this is usually mulched for me. I don't really have to do anything over here. The rest of my yard I usually either buy bales of pine straw, or I use hardwood mulch, which you can get in bulk. If you're going to use bagged products, and that's totally fine. I know people have pretty strong opinions about red mulch. Mulch, there's a lot of dyed mulches out there: brown mulch, red mulch, black mulch, that kind of thing. In this particular case, whether you like the red mulch or don't like the red mulch doesn't really matter. I would not use red mulch in my beds if I was trying to resell a house or trying to sell a piece of real estate. I just wouldn't. Some people are going to be very turned off by it. Same thing with the black mulch. Just either get the brown dyed mulch or the regular hardwood mulch, or pine bark mulch is okay, but pine tends to float, and so if there's storms and that kind of thing and you're not there to monitor it and sweep it back into the beds, that could be an issue. And then pine straw would be the other choice. So here are a few tips on mulching that may help you and save you a little bit of money. One thing is, where you have hard edges like this sidewalk right here, and then the beds right here between the sidewalk and the house, if you'll take a shovel, this is a trenching shovel right here, but really any kind of shovel, and put it here next to the concrete, and just make an angle where the soil is being kind of thrown that way, and go along here like this and create a little bit of a trench right along that concrete, just like that. When you mulch, your mulch will fall down against that concrete and won't be out on your sidewalk all the time, and then you can blow your sidewalk off easier, that kind of thing. Do the exact same thing where the lawn, any place where lawn and beds come together, put a little edge there and allow that mulch just to rest right up against that grass. Creates a really, really neat look. I don't care what type of mulch you're using. If you go buy pine straw, bagged mulch, bulk mulch, doesn't matter. This is the big tip right here. I don't know how long it's going to take you to sell your house. You don't know how long it's going to take you to sell your house. Hopefully a week, who knows. But it could go on longer than that. And so I would not, typically when we mulch, we're going to put down maybe 3 inches, of whatever material that we're using: pine straw, pine bark, hardwood mulch, whatever, dyed mulches, whatever. I would not put down anywhere near that much, and cut your budget in half. That way, if your house stays on the market for 3 or 4 months or 5 months, 6 months, who knows, you can come back and lightly do it again. So I just put some bark in this bucket right here, but I would take and put the smallest amount you possibly can to cover the ground. Okay, that's all I would do initially, and then save the budget for 3 months from then. Hopefully you get out of it on the cheap and you sell your house really quickly and you only spent half as much as you normally would on mulch. But in terms of mulching, the thinnest you can to make it look super neat. You're going to be using that vinegar spray or something to control the weeds that'll be popping up, and that should keep everything looking neat for 3 or 4 months. And then, like I say, if it's still on the market at that point, use the other half of your budget and put another thin layer on just to make it look fresh again. So I hope this video was helpful. Ask any questions you have down below. Pruning is probably the trickiest thing here, getting plants under control. Like I say, if you have a year in advance, get started on it earlier than later. But if you're on a short sell and you've got to move quickly, you really only want to probably take small amounts off plants or take them out entirely. So that's probably the only tricky part of most of this. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. If it was helpful, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for upcoming content.